These lectures are not designed for use as medical references to diagnose, treat, or prevent medical or mental health illnesses or trauma. If you have questions about the diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of a medical condition or mental illness, you should consult your personal physician or other mental health professional.
Eliud Kipchoge is the best marathoner of all time. He's had countless opportunities to make media appearances and live the life of a celebrity, including endorsement deals from the likes of Nike and other companies. Yet he prefers a modest lifestyle with a singular focus on running. He's not anxious, he's not withdrawn, he's not insecure. This, he said, makes him happy. In life, the idea is to be happy, he says, in the documentary Breaking Two. So I believe in a calm, simple, low-profile life. You live simple, you train hard, and live an honest life. Then you are free. These are the rules he's developed for living his best life. What are your rules? Welcome to today's lecture, where we dive deeper into cognition. Literally deeper, as we begin to look underneath what's driving our automatic thoughts. We'll look at our conditional assumptions and rules, and eventually get to our core beliefs and schemas. Our tools will include an expansion and elaboration of the downward arrow technique, key prompts to help us dig deeper, and a core beliefs worksheet. We'll also add a new tool from positive psychology that helps us identify our signature strengths. If you're not feeling particularly comfortable with monitoring cognitions or doing thought records, now would be a good time to go back to lectures 5 and 6 when we introduced and elaborated those skills. Today, we'll build on those skills and add a few new challenges. In prior lectures, we've talked about emotions and mood, both in an acute sense, but also a longer-lasting sense with moods we just can't seem to shake. Both are amenable to the CBT tools we've covered thus far, and both fall into the category of emotion regulation. Today, we're moving closer to what some might call personality, more deep-seated traits that are more difficult to change if they can be changed at all. It's not really about temperament, we're most likely born with that, but we're talking about very deeply seated, early learned beliefs about ourselves, our world, and other people. I've heard it described as a few simple words we hold in our hearts. Do our words say yes or no? Do they say safety or danger? Do they say loved or rejected? I want to acknowledge, too, that since these beliefs have such a long history and were learned so early, they often sound somewhat childish or overly simplistic, and in a way they are. They made sense when we learned them, even if they don't entirely make sense now. Let's do a quick refresh of our cognitive model. We've learned that it isn't situations that make us feel a certain way, it's the way we think about those situations. The path moves from trigger to cognition to emotion, and then maybe on to behavior. But why did we have those automatic thoughts? What drives them? We have elaborate sets of rules, scripts, schemas, and core beliefs that we've learned usually early in life with only minor revisions as we grow older. These deep-seated beliefs have a way of reinforcing themselves due to selective attention or confirmation bias. But that doesn't mean that they can't be changed or at least worked around. So let's picture that cognitive model with these deeper structures. We have the trigger, the activating event. It triggers automatic thoughts, which then give rise to emotions and maybe to behaviors. We can draw an arrow downward beneath the automatic thoughts where we might find conditional rules and assumptions. Things like, if I stand up for myself, then I'll be hated and rejected. They are often if-then statements we use to guide our decisions and our relationships. If you keep drawing arrows downward, next would be scripts. These include conditional assumptions and rules, but they're more complex compilations that are context dependent. They tell us how to think and how to act and what to expect. If we keep going downward, we finally get to schemas and core beliefs. Now, these terms can be a little slippery since some CBT folks believe that core beliefs and schemas are the same thing. From a cognitive psychology perspective, a schema is a rubric. It's a guide of how we process information. It includes the body of evidence, our selective memories and images, that support something like a core belief. If your core belief is something like, I'm unlovable, then the schema might be all the times you think that that was proven true, all the behaviors you need to engage in due to your unlovability, and the predictions you make about how others will treat you. Either way, both are quite deep and difficult to access. That also means they're difficult to change. To complicate matters further, we might have developed defenses that tell us to cover up or even alter the way our schemas or core beliefs are expressed. Sometimes the person that feels unlovable can be hostile and rejecting, hurting others before they can be hurt themselves. Sometimes a person who's anxious can come off as aloof or uninterested in other people. Let's flesh out our definitions of these categories of cognition just a bit more, then see what we can do to bring these into the light. Now, conditional rules and assumptions have been called the connective tissue between automatic thoughts and core beliefs. They're essentially our guidebook of what we need to do to get by, given what we believe about ourselves, others, and the world. They might tell us to hide our weaknesses because other people are dangerous and unsupportive. They might tell us to exploit others at every opportunity because it's a dog-eat-dog world. They might tell us that we have to be promiscuous if we expect to be loved. As you think about your conditional rules and assumptions, you should start writing them down. In fact, start a library of rules because we have many, many rules. Don't fight them or debate them just yet. Just write them down. We'll later see that it is this set of rules that helps us better understand our behavior. In fact, it is our rules that tell us the coping strategies that we need to adopt. Are you dealing with a breakup? Your conditional rules and assumptions will tell you what to expect and what to do. Are you searching for a new job? Your rules and assumptions will tell you what you need to do and what to expect. Now, core beliefs are a little more simple and more evaluative. They are estimations of our value, what we think we can expect from others, and what we think about the world. Common negative core beliefs about the self include things like, I am unlovable, I am a failure, I am worthless, I am incompetent, or I am inadequate. Judy Beck, the daughter of the founder of CBT and also a CBT therapist herself, describes 6 key features of core beliefs. First, they develop early in life, usually in childhood and/or adolescence. Second, by definition, negative core beliefs are biased and too overly general. They usually fall into 3 categories: thoughts of helplessness, worthlessness, or unlovability. 4, these negative core beliefs are self-perpetuating through habits of mind. They can be modified or replaced by more accurate and/or more adaptive beliefs. And lastly, positive core beliefs can often get overlooked due to presenting distress. They're there, you might just need to dig a little deeper to find them. For now, though, let's start with something basic. How do we start digging underneath an automatic thought to find some rules and assumptions and core beliefs? Let's go back to the technique called downward arrow. We first described this when we learned about thought records. We first write down a surface-level automatic thought, such as, I'm never going to get into college. You follow that up with a question like, okay, let's assume you never get into college. Why would that happen? What would it mean? Well, maybe I just wasn't smart enough. And what would that say or mean about you? Well, it means I'm just not good enough. And what would that say or mean about you? Well, it just means I'm a failure. The strategy is to keep asking questions like, and then what? And if that did happen, what would it mean? What would it say about you? Sometimes you get to an exaggerated view of reality and you see a habit of mind, but sometimes you get to a core belief. Other more direct assessments use incomplete sentences and ask you to quickly come up with an answer before you think too much. Let's do an exercise. I'm going to say a few incomplete sentences, and I want you to blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. Ready? I am blank. I've always blank. I'm known for. Others are. You know, he's just going to. The world is. I've learned you have to. The last one, people are just... Okay, so you get the idea. What did you come up with? Did you only come up with negatives? Well, that wasn't really part of the instructions, so that's interesting. Did you only come up with positives? How did you think these beliefs might influence your behavior? You might also try a few of the validated questionnaires you can find online. The two most popular are the Dysfunctional Attitude Scale, or the DAS, or the Schema Checklist. Both are quite long, but they do give you an interesting picture of what might lie underneath. Here are a few sample items from the DAS. My value as a person depends greatly on what others think of me. You then rate your level of agreement with that statement. If other people know what you're really like, they will think less of you. My happiness depends more on other people than it does me. Or, if you cannot do something well, there's little point in doing it at all. Once you have your library of rules and an idea of some of your core beliefs, it's time to roll up your sleeves and see what you can do about it. Now, unlike automatic thoughts, where you can do a thought record and poof, they suddenly change, change here is a little more incremental. I see it more like chipping away at a boulder. Each single chip is small, but over time, they can eventually change a boulder into a pebble. We already know most of the strategies that we might use. Evidence for and against, listing advantages and disadvantages, or the strategy of, well, what would you say to a friend if they thought this or believed this? You can also view your core beliefs on a continuum, and here we're looking for shades of gray since most core beliefs are all or none thinking. You can assign a percentage of believability to each thought. Do you believe it 100%, 50%, or 75%? You might also use behavioral experiments. And here you might want to test the truth of a past belief, or you might want to test the truth of a new modified belief that you've just come up with. We'll use a combination of these strategies to do something called a core beliefs worksheet. Here you'll first write your core beliefs up at the top of the sheet. No filtering, doesn't matter if it seems irrational or illogical. Then you're going to rate the percent strength of your belief in that thought. Below this, I want you to divide your paper into two columns, evidence for and evidence against the core belief. Eventually, at the bottom, you're going to write a new tentative core belief and rate its believability. So how can you keep fighting back against those inner demons, those rules and core beliefs? First, do the restructuring, then repeat and repeat and repeat. One patient called his new thoughts his mantras, and he created a short set of them. Whenever he felt old thoughts bubbling up on the surface, he'd just repeat his mantras. Another wrote similar statements out on sticky notes and put them all over her house. A third put them on postcards and mailed them to herself. It's all about repetition and using external reminders, at least in the beginning. But let's see this exercise, the core beliefs worksheet in action. Let's return to our case of Amanda. So Amanda, as we've been doing the thought records and working on revising your case formulation, we've been capturing common cognitions that come up. We found a few themes, and we have a working list of potential core beliefs. And just sort of as a reminder, we have the automatic thoughts sort of up on the surface. We have conditional rules and assumptions we have about how things operate in the world, kind of at the middle level. Then we have some foundational beliefs about the world, about other people, about ourselves. And at core, it's really sort of these simple but powerful ideas that we've learned about ourselves, about our value, about our worth. And one of the core beliefs that we've written down, and it has a few different permutations, you said in a lot of different ways that when you let your guard down and when you're allowing yourself to hear that voice, it tells you that you're not good enough, that you're not good enough to have a romantic partner, that you're not good enough to be successful, you're not good enough to get a job. And that's in comparison to your brother and others, but just in general, there's something defective or deficient in the center of who you are. That's an opinion, right? And we've learned to challenge opinions. The thing about core beliefs is it's hard to change them with a thought record. You can't. You can chip away at them, but it takes, I think, a lot more practice at rewriting and rethinking them, and then it takes some behavioral experiments and really living your life in a different way so that it starts proving to yourself that maybe those beliefs need to be shifted. So I wanted to show you what's called a core beliefs worksheet. And it's the first of many that we'll do on core beliefs, but it's an important start. So here we have the core belief up at the top, and it's written simply on purpose. So we know that people are much more complicated than I'm lovable, I'm not lovable. There's a lot of complexity there. But I've just written what you've shared in several of the thought records, I'm not good enough. And then below that it includes on an affiliative domain to be loved, or on an achievement level to be successful. So both of those are there. If you were to rate your current percent belief in that thought, and we know that it's irrational, but it's there, right? So when you see that, is it 50% believable, 75% believable? Depends on the day?
It kind of depends on the day, but I think that in general, probably hanging around about 70% of the time is what I...
Okay. So I'll write 70% down, and that will be our starting point. We'll do the exercise, and then we'll have you re-rate the strength of the belief, keeping in mind that it's probably mood dependent, and you're right, it does kind of depend on the day at times and how activated that belief might be. The other thing we'll do at the end of either this exercise or maybe a couple of exercises is we will write a revised core belief. And revised core beliefs, when you first start, they may not be super believable, right? Because they're unfamiliar, but they may be more realistic. You know, they may more accurately reflect who you are in your life. So the way we start with this, we have this belief, I'm not good enough. We probably want to pick just one version. I'm not good enough to be loved, or I'm not good enough to be successful, because those are sort of a branch point, you know, and we would think of different evidence in those two categories. So which one would you like to do first, do you think?
Let's do the successful one.
So I'm not good enough to be successful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll circle that one. And is the percent belief still a 70%?
Yeah.
Okay, so still a 70%. And what we have here on this piece of paper, we've just drawn a line down the middle. On the left-hand side, we want to generate and to recall evidence that supports that core belief, that says, yes, indeed, you're not good enough to be successful. On the right-hand side of this piece of paper, we have evidence against, and here you're going to look for counterexamples or counter-evidence that says, no, it's not true, you are good enough to be successful. Okay? And like I said, simple exercise, it feels maybe awkward to get it started, but let's think about, we'll start creating a list maybe of evidence for. So evidence for, I'm not good enough to be successful.
The fact that I don't have a job.
Okay, so I'm going to write, I do not currently have a job. Okay, what else?
I'm a woman.
Okay, I am a woman. Okay, what else?
I'm black.
I'm black. What else?
I'm not experienced.
I'm not experienced. I'm not good enough to be successful. What other things?
I don't know, I'm not likable enough.
I'm not likable enough. Okay. What else?
It sounds kind of superficial, but you know, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, you know, what people would classically say is beautiful.
Note that as a starting point, we're using her implicit model of good enough and successful. Those terms can be quite subjective, and we'll want to pin them down a little bit later. For now, we want to do a broad survey of what deeper thoughts might just bubble up. You can see her implicit picture of a successful person is someone that's attractive, male, not black, and has a job. We can't know for sure, but it looks like she may be internalizing broader biases that tell her what she can and cannot do. Also, we haven't really cracked open the issue of what really is evidence. Being a woman or being black isn't evidence of being a failure. Evidence would be looking at social demographics and the odds that she might have of succeeding compared to someone else who's different from her. But let's see where she went with this. I was hoping we could eventually get to looking at some key counterexamples of powerful, successful black women, role models that could open her mind and build her confidence. Let's watch.
I would say that I think I'm smart enough.
Okay, I'm smart enough. And why do you say that? What makes you think that?
I wasn't a horrible student in school. I was actually a really good student. So apparently, I guess I have the ability to learn. So yeah, I'm thinking, I've always been a high achiever when it came to, not just schoolwork, but extracurricular activities as well. So I have skills.
Okay, so I'm writing these down, and maybe we can elaborate some of them. So I'm smart enough. I was a good student, and maybe adding to that, you graduated from college, right? You have a bachelor's degree, and we know just statistically the likelihood that you will be employed and that you will earn a higher income is higher if you have a college degree.
Right.
And that is across all genders, across all races, that college education is a good investment, right? Some people are pushing back against that these days, but so far the data still says that it's a good investment. Okay, so you're a good student, you're a high achiever. If you look at your past history, scholastically, academically, you've done well. You've done well. Okay, so up until job search part,
Right.
right? You've done well. So it's good to hold that reality in place as evidence against this thought or this core belief that I'm not good enough to be successful. You also said you're a hard worker and you have skills. So what skills do you have?
I pick up things quickly. I'm able to adapt to new and different situations quickly. I'm, like I said before, I'm a hard worker. Whatever it is I'm doing, I'm usually pretty dedicated and committed to doing the best job I can with whatever it is I'm doing. So I think that's a positive attribute.
It's harder to think of counter evidence because a core belief is something that you've held for so long that we use. We've talked about confirmation bias before. Once you hold something at your core, you're constantly scanning for things that support the belief that you already hold. And it takes more effort to find evidence that disconfirms or argues against that belief. So let's think about it. And I'm glad you sort of pulled in your past history. And these are not opinions. It's just fact. You went to school and you got good grades, right? It's just it is a fact, and I think good counter evidence.
In this clip, we see Amanda fighting back. She's not making stuff up, she's just being fair. What are her past experiences? Past evidence that her core beliefs may be too extreme or too negative. Another strategy would be to more closely examine evidence for the negative core belief itself. Let's see what she did.
Let's look at some of the evidence for and see if it's balanced or fair. Up at the top of that list, you said, I don't currently have a job, and that's proof that I'm not good enough to be successful. So how can we push back against that?
Probably by saying that that's the current situation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to stay that way.
Okay.
That can change.
Okay. And how about I'll just be devil's advocate a little bit. And sure, it can change, but it hasn't for several years. So maybe that's because you're not good enough.
Yeah, that's what I hear in my head.
Yeah.
But I'm learning that, each day is a new day, a new opportunity to, try to do something different. than what you've done previously. So if this is what I've been hearing in my head for all of these years, that, maybe now is a point where I can start to kind of retrain the way that I think and think more positively about the situation, and that perhaps in doing that, then that will influence my behavior where I don't get discouraged as easily and don't give up on the process as quickly. And if I kind of just stay the course, that can change.
Right. And you're not in this alone. I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but you're certainly not the only college graduate to have to move back home so that they can find a job, or to feel disillusioned or discouraged because they took out student loans and they have a college degree and now they can't get a quality job. They can get other jobs, but it's not really worthwhile.
Right.
So it's a phenomenon that's happening. It's not personal about you, but those folks do go on to find employment. There are even very successful people. Bill Gates was unemployed for a while. Steve Jobs was unemployed for a while. So these sort of big, super rich, successful folks, they've had periods where they really struggled. If you plot out a career of successful people, you'll learn that there were those periods. One way to gain perspective on that is to read biographies. And I know you're a reader and you love history, right? So reading those narratives of people and the ups and downs they had over the course of a career can help us see that maybe where I am in this moment most likely isn't going to be where you are in the future.
So before we were just looking at evidence for and against. Here we went back to look at evidence to decide if it was fair and valid. Remember that just because something feels right doesn't mean it is right, nor does feeling something for a long time mean that it is valid. So let's review our new tool for our toolbox, the Core Beliefs Worksheet. I think of it as a more advanced thought record. With the thought record, you pick the hot thought of the moment. With the Core Beliefs Worksheet, you pick the deeper, long-held belief that often drives the automatic thought of the moment or the hot thoughts. Similar to a thought record, you look for evidence for and against. You fight against selective attention to confirming evidence. You fight against all or none thinking. You step outside of yourself and try to evaluate this global judgment more fairly. Given the depth and stability of these core beliefs, a worksheet isn't going to magically make them go away. However, you're sowing doubt. You're chipping away at the certainty with which these beliefs typically are held. It'll take a lot of repetition, but you'll slowly get to where you want to be. If you're interested in learning more or seeing similar core beliefs worksheets, all you need to do is type CBT and Core Beliefs Worksheet into Google. Let's end by turning to a positive psychology exercise looking at our signature strengths. These too might be core and very much integrated into who we are. Strengths can be defined as a pre-existing capacity for a particular way of behaving, thinking, or feeling that is authentic and energizing to the user and enables optimal functioning, development, and performance. Although every person has certain signature strengths, it's argued that most people are not truly aware of the strengths that they possess. This assumption has been supported by research which shows that only 1/3 of the people when asked were aware of their strengths. We possess strengths, and we can also exercise and build those muscles rather than letting them atrophy. But what are our signature strengths, and what makes you noteworthy? For this skill, let's use the signature strengths exercise, and keep in mind that 2/3 of us don't know what our strength is or will have a little bit of trouble naming our strengths. Now, in order to do this, you can start with a few signature strength prompts like, I am at my best when, or I really shine when I. You can also try a number of surveys online to help you. The most recent I did was by the VIA Institute, VIA, Institute on Character. The quickest way to know your strengths is to ask a friend, a family member, or coworker. In fact, I'd ask at least a few people, maybe even including at least one frenemy, a friend who is maybe an enemy. See where their reports overlap. Examples of strengths include curiosity, prudence, wisdom, courage, perseverance, honesty, kindness, humor, humility, or gratitude. Ask each person, including yourself, to write a page, a half page, describing you when you're at your best. Then sit down and see what you got. There's a good chance a strength or two emerged. Once you have your strength, you need to exercise it. If your superpower is curiosity, think about different contexts of your life when you can use it. Maybe ask more questions at work. Start a book club. Sign up for a class, or teach young people. The point is really to see our best features, then do all we can to uncover them and to use them proudly. So today in our toolbox, we've mostly added tools to address deeper cognitions like core beliefs, with the core beliefs worksheet being our main tool. We've also added in a positive psychology tool, Signature Strengths. Please join us for our next lecture, where we'll do a quick toolbox recap and continue practicing blended techniques using both cognitive and behavioral strategies to practice assertiveness and manage our stress. Thank you.